So hi everybody, today we're assembled here to hear this talk by Hindol Sengupta. It's titled Being Hindu in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Hindol Sengupta is an award-winning author. He has written 8 books. He's been published in the United States, UK and India among other territories. He won the Wilbur Award in 2018 for Being Hindu, Understanding a Peaceful Path in a Violent World, the first book on Hinduism to win the prestigious award given by the Religion Communicators Council of America. Earlier winners of the award include writers like Christopher Hitchens and Mitch Albom. He won the PSF Prize for Public Service in India in 2015. Past winners of the prize include the late Indian scientist and President APJ Abdul Kalam. His book, Recasting India, How Entrepreneurship is Revolutionizing the World's Largest Democracy, was shortlisted in 2015 for the Hayek Prize given by the Manhattan Institute in memory of the Nobel laureate economist F.A. Hayek. Sengupta is a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader and a Knight Pickett Fellow at Columbia University. He has been a journalist at the Indian editions of Fortune magazine, Bloomberg TV, CNBC, and CNN. He is the founder of the global solutions journalism platform GRIN. So, quite a prolific resume. Am I missing anything, or is that good? That's good. Okay, so we're doing this talk in collaboration with the Indic Academy, which is a global multi-city horizontal networks of academics, authors, artists, and activists involved in protecting, preserving, and promoting Indic thought. It seeks to bring a renaissance by nurturing a network of public intellectuals and enabling their transformation into leaders of cultural thought and expression. So this talk fits perfectly into this agenda that Indic Academy has. And Hindu Yuva and the Vedanta Study Circle at UFI, where this talk is being done in collaboration with us too. And I'm the president of Vedanta Study Circle, and Pallav is also the president of Hindu Yuva. He just left the room, yeah. So you guys are welcome to sign up with us, and the talk will be about 40-45 minutes, and after that we'll do Q&A. Right after Q&A, we'll be signing some books if you guys want to get his book, Being Hindu. That's it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can, I'll just take it.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. It's a really pretty campus. It reminds me of campuses in Europe, which I'm really fond of. At Columbia University, as you would appreciate, we don't have a campus as beautiful as yours, but we make do with what we can in the city of New York. But thanks very much. I'm really happy to be here. Lovely to return to your part of the world again. It's a really special time for me to come here because I believe it's a really special time for us to be talking about Hinduism. There is a moment in the cultures of the world where a tipping point arises in different civilizations. And I believe today we are at a tipping point in the, if I may say so, the Hindu civilization. Or perhaps we could call it the Hindu imagination of the world. The world can be imagined by various communities, various ethnicities, various geographies, and of course various philosophies. After all, what is a religion? A religion is merely a way of looking at the world. It's a philosophy. Why do we even need God? Why do we even need religion? A lot of people ask me in my talks, why talk about religion at all? Haven't we surpassed these conversations before? Actually, we haven't, and statistically also we haven't. We now know that by 2050, perhaps 70% of the world, if not more, would be committed to being part of some religion or the other in some shape or form. And we'll come to what does it mean to belong to a religion in a few minutes. But let's begin by addressing the question, because it directly ties into why talk about Hinduism at all. Why do we need religion at all? Why do I need God? Why do I care? You just heard my brief resume, and I'm sure most of you have or will have resumes much longer and more fruitful than mine. Why do you even need this idea of religion and God? I was speaking to a bunch of an audience, a bunch of students and teachers at Columbia University, and I was telling them that to the students, perhaps also the teachers, that there will come a point in your life when you have, and this was particularly to a whole bunch of business school students, that there will come a point in your life when you go out and you get that hedge fund job and you buy everything you want. And there will also come a point in your life when you do everyone you want, you buy everything and you do everyone. And then there will come this point in your life when you'll begin to ask, when I've fulfilled all these base desires in my life, when I've bought that car, I've dated that person, I've been to every holiday, what does it all mean? And I want to connect you to this wonderful conversation I had last fall with a professor at Cambridge, where we asked the basic question, why should we be concerned about technology and what does it do to our lives? And why should we even consider God at a time of technology when technology is really changing the very biophysical self that we all sort of inhabit? And we thought about it, and we were talking about this just before I came here, that if you look at the whole span of human history, we are at a unique point when technology will change our very physical bodies. Technology has changed how we have evolved. There was the fire, and there was the wheel, and there was, of course, much later telephony and electricity, and then so on and so forth. But now we will have technology that will go into our very bodies. It will change. What does it mean? One of the wonderful things that some scientists are looking at in Colombia is, what does it mean to have vision? What does it mean to have an eye? Right? So through the entire stretch of human history, to have an eye has meant something. You're born, you have these two eyes, unless they become defective, or unless you develop a cataract, you go through an accident or something like that. You have these pair of eyes, and then they might have power, they might not have power, they're able to see, they're able to do certain things. But today, if you have certain implants that change the nature of vision itself, it changes the nature of what does it mean to have a set of eyes, that very sense of self will change. And that's not just about the eye. Some of you may know that there is this concept called the phantom arm. When your arm is amputated or any part of your body is amputated, for a long time, you get a sense that that part of your body is still with you. Where does that sense come from? There is this wonderful lecture as part of the Gifford lectures, which some of you might want to go and listen to, which talks about exactly this. What does it mean to have a phantom arm? Once it gets amputated, what happens? What are the neurological processes through which we understand that even if we don't have a limb, why do we still have that sensation? All of this then comes down to the question that this Cambridge professor and I explored for several days last fall, which is the big question, the big philosophical question, why should I not kill myself in the next 5 minutes? And why do I have that question? I have that question because I begin to ask, what does it all mean? Why should I be at Columbia, which I am? Why should I write a book? Why should you study statistics? Why should you have a job? Why should you have a home? Why should you even bother to come to college? Why should I do anything? And that is the philosophical question that we cannot escape. Why do any of this at all? Why live at all? Why should I not kill? Why should I not kill myself in the next 5 minutes? And we had this wonderful conversation where we both agreed that the biggest question in philosophy, perhaps the only question in philosophy worth answering, and this ties into Hinduism beautifully, but the only question in philosophy worth answering is, what about death? Right? Death is the final question in philosophy, because death answers or death raises that big question, what is the meaning of all of this? And that's why you will see when people come to the end of their lives, they often contemplate, what did I really do through my life? What was the meaning of all of this that I did? I quarreled with people, I built this, I built that, I could not build this. What does all my success and failure really mean? The moment you come to the question, what is the meaning of all this? You have to ask the question, which is the question of religion. Who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? There are, according to me, only 3 questions worth answering in Hindu philosophy. I would argue there are only 3 questions worth answering in any philosophy, but especially in Hindu philosophy, I would argue there are only 3 valid questions worth asking and answering. Who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? There is this wonderful anecdote of Ramana Maharishi. Some of you may have heard this name. Ramana Maharishi, of course, was this great saint. He lived on top of a hill for many, many years. He spent, many of you would know, a large part of his time in silence. He never said much. Right? And in the world or in the analysis of Ramana Maharishi, there's this beautiful idea that the silence was the answer. The silence had such depth and profundity that it allowed you to find the answer yourself. that the silence that surrounded Ramana Maharishi was the real answer, right? And there's this wonderful book where Paul Brunton, the great explorer, goes to Ramana Maharishi and he has all these questions, right? And he wants to ask all these questions. And what are those questions? We're talking about the 1920s and 30s here. So the questions are, what is going to happen to the world? Will there be war between all these kingdoms and nation states? If war comes, what will it mean? What will it mean to the idea of Western civilization, and so on and so forth? So he asks all these questions to Ramana Maharishi. And after some time, the master turns to this explorer and says, who's asking these questions? And the man says, what do you mean? I'm asking the question, you can see me, I'm sitting here right in front of you. And the master says, well, but who are you? And in a moment, Paul Brunton writes that he suddenly felt all his all his questions slip away from him. He did not have any more question to ask because he realized he had not asked himself that fundamental question, who am I? And I think Hindu philosophy is important to me because it is the widest breadth of ideas and the deepest pool of philosophies, if I were to call it that, to the question, who am I? It all really boils down to that fundamental question. Who am I, what do I want, and what is my purpose? Most of us, all of you and me, most of us will never go beyond the first question. Somebody like Swami Vivekananda would have answered all three, right? Most of us will never go beyond the first question. And you can understand this very easily. If you ask yourself, who am I today? Is it the same answer that you will receive for yourself that you did 10 years ago? Think about it. Would it be the same answer? Do you think 10 years later, wherever you go, whatever you do, if you ask yourself, who am I? Would it be the same answer? Unlikely. You don't know, but unlikely. From whatever you know till today, the question asked at the age of 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 25 compared to say 35 or 40 or 45, at every phase of your life, it seems that the answer changes. But of course, in reality, the answer does not change, right? There is a subliminal self that remains steady. Of course, most of us cannot access that subliminal state. That deeper state of consciousness, we are not able to access. And therefore, our answer changes again and again. I was just telling our friends here, there's this wonderful Zen haiku, where the Zen master says, before enlightenment, there is chop wood and sweep the ground. Right? So before you find enlightenment, what do? You chop wood and you sweep the ground. After enlightenment, chop wood and sweep the ground. Because enlightenment is not magic. Enlightenment doesn't give you wings. Enlightenment doesn't mean you start to fly. Enlightenment doesn't mean you become Superman. Enlightenment is a deeper understanding of the answer to the question, who am I? And I believe Hindu philosophy is one of the great pools of knowledge that helps you come closer to the answer, who am I? Let me give you one illustration which made me think, even when I was a child, and I think began the process which then finally landed up into this book. I'm Bengali. I come from the state of Bengal in India, which is in the eastern part of India. I come from a city called Calcutta. I wasn't born there, but I grew up there. And among Bengalis, there is a great festival of Durga Puja, which happens in autumn. Many of you might know. It's a 10-day festival, and where the Bengalis worship the Devi Durga, right? In that, there is a wonderful ritual, if you want to call it that, and we can go into a debate on what is a ritual and whether we should call it a ritual or not, but let's use the term ritual for now. Let's make it do for now. There is this wonderful ritual of Pran Pratishta. I don't know how many of you know or have ever heard of Pran Pratishta. I always loved that idea of Pran Pratishta. It happens right before the festival begins. It's the, if I were to call it that, it's the final touch to the goddess before the festival begins. What happens there? A priest, again I'm using the word priest. Now you could ask, what does a priest really mean? But those are deeper questions. But for now, for the purpose of this lecture, let's stick to the word priest. The priest essentially gives life to the idol. There are certain technologies, and I'm using the word technologies with great care because I find the word incantations a little too, a little too cheap. But there is a certain process through which the priest gives life to the idol, and then the idol is worshipped. Without Pran Pratishtha, and one of the things of Pran Pratishtha is the final painting of the eyes of the goddess. You paint the eyes of the goddess, that's the final, because they believe that that's how the light shines within, the light of life, right? This is a really interesting thing, and this differentiates the Hindu imagination of the world from other imaginations. How? In the Hindu imagination of the world, where is God? See, all religions or all faiths or all belief structures are concerned with one question, which is, where is the truth? Because at the end of the day, all religions tell you that there is a truth to be found. Somewhere you will find the truth. But where is this truth to be found? Where is it, right? Some religions will tell you that the truth is in a place. Where is that place? In a force. Now that force, you can give it the name God, you can give it many other names, whatever name you give that force, right? That force contains the truth. The truth is then transmitted. How is it transmitted? It is usually transmitted via a messenger. Some messenger. There is some messenger who receives the truth and then often encapsulates the truth. So you could ask, well, the messenger is probably human. What happens when the messenger dies? Before the messenger dies, the messenger encapsulates the truth in some form that is accessible. Usually it's a book, right? Or in olden days it could be a set of tablets. And by tablet, of course, I don't mean a tablet you eat, but I mean, stone tablets, right? Where you carve out the message of the truth. So that the message of the truth remains in that form to be accessed by whoever wants that truth. In the Hindu imagination of the world, there is no external force which is divine. The locus standi of divinity is internal. This is very important to understand. It's a very fundamental difference between the Hindu imagination of the world and other imaginations of the world. Right? The Hindu imagination of the world sees the divine as fundamentally inside you. It's an internal locus standi. So therefore the Hindu imagines the world as, where will you find the truth? You will find the truth inside you, of course. How will you find the truth? Well, by going inside yourself. What does going inside yourself mean? Well, in the most basic form, it could mean meditation. But again, I always say this, when people say meditation, there is always this imagery, right? It's a design thinking thing. Meditation means you cross your leg and you sit in one place and you fold your hand and you close your eyes and meditate, right? But there are many forms of being meditative. I feel sometimes when I really read a book or even write a book that has me entirely engrossed, that process is entirely meditative. Because my attention does not veer at all from that moment. I'm completely in that moment. Great musicians have that too. Which is why, I once heard the great Abida Parveen sing at Humayun's tomb in Delhi, right? And Abida Parveen, of course, is this great Sufi singer from Pakistan. And she was singing Baba Bulle Shah, right? And it was, I remember, a moonlit night in Delhi, we were all sitting. But Abida Parveen did not care about the 1,000 people who had gathered and were sitting and listening to her. She was singing straight to God. And I really felt it that night, in that moment, that she was singing straight to the divine. It was a moment that her music was going straight to the divine. That she did not care at all about all these people or the musicians or anything at all. And this we know. There are many great artists who feel that, right? So, in the Hindu imagination, the idea of the divine is within you. Therefore, the question constantly is, where is the answer to be found? It is to be found inside you. There's this wonderful story about this. Alexander the Great is on the banks of the river Indus, right? Alexander the Great has conquered most of the known world. Alexander the Great tells his army that this is the river Indus, and beyond that lies our salvation, because if we conquer what lies beyond that, we have conquered the entire world, which no one, not even the greatest Greek heroes, have managed. He will be the first man, the first great hero to have conquered the entire known world, right? So he's on the banks of the river, and he's on a horse, and he comes to a tree, and Alexander the Great gets off his horse and goes up to a man who's sitting under the tree and meditating. Now, he could be today, in today's parlance, we would call that man a sadhu, maybe, a mendicant, an ascetic, whatever word you want. But the point is, the moot point is, here is this man meditating under this tree. Excellent. Alexander the Great goes up to this man and says, "What are you doing?" And the man smiles and opens his eyes and looks at Alexander and says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "What do you mean? I am Alexander of the Great. I am the great prince of Macedonia. I am conquering the world." And then he says, "But what are you doing? You know, what are you doing under this tree beside a river? Why are you randomly sitting here?" And the man says, "Well, I'm conquering myself. I'm conquering myself." Because in the imagination that Alexander comes from, that imagination has one vital thing in it. That vital thing is that life is one. When you die, there will be a river. You cross that river, and you go into, if you've been a hero, you go and join other great heroes. Odysseus, Hercules, and all these great Greek legendary heroes. In the world of this sadhu, this mendicant, it's an eternal cycle, isn't it? And the point is to figure it out. The point is to understand yourself. The point is, that's why, one of my great gurus used to say, they keep saying that moksha, and that's why one of the monks of the Ramakrishna Mission once said, I'm from the Ramakrishna Mission tradition, my family has always been part of it. So one of them laughed one day and we were discussing something. They have a great sense of humor, these monks. So one of them laughed one day and told me that these days they have all these moksha, music festivals, right? And I was like, well, that's, isn't it cool that at least they're going to moksha and nirvana, right? And he says, well, the funny thing is, moksha and nirvana is not supposed to put you in a trance. They're getting it wrong. It is supposed to liberate you. But if you keep going back to the show, you're not getting liberated, you see. It's supposed to liberate you. The point is liberation. The point is being free. The point is being free from the attachment of even going to a show called moksha or nirvana, whatever it's called, right? So if you keep going back there, then you're not really being free, you see. It sort of defeats the purpose. I once used to, I think, say that I once used to date, I was going to say a friend, but I might as well tell the truth. I used to date this person who once told me that they must get a tattoo. I was a wonderful person, really, truly, truly wonderful. And this is being recorded, so I should say wonderful a few more times. No, truly wonderful, very kind and very, very, very generous. But they had a very interesting theory. They said they wanted to get a tattoo, and they thought that the tattoo should say, Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityoma Mritangamaya. What does it mean? It means, of course, lead us from untruth to truth, from darkness to light, and lead us from the fear of death to the idea of eternal immortality. Right? It occurred to me, and I made the mistake of actually saying it to the person, that if you truly began to believe that there was a path to the idea of immortality, you wouldn't tattoo it in your hand. You know what I mean? Do you see the contradiction in the two things? Because if you truly believe that you're going to be free, and if you truly believe there was a path which would lead you to this blissful idea of immortality, which would free you from that ultimate fear that human beings have, which is the fear of death, you wouldn't tattoo it on your hand. Because remember, this is what you're getting rid of. You want to be free of this, right? This body. By tattooing it on your body, you're never going to be free of it. You may get a lot of other things, but you ain't going to get free of this idea. Therefore, somebody asked me in one of my lectures recently that His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, whenever he's asked, what is Buddhism? Right? A lot of people ask him, what is Buddhism? And of course, he could say, well, you know, these are about the noble paths, and the Buddha said this, and the Buddha said that, and da. But he brings it down to one very simple thing. He says, Buddhism is compassion. If you're compassionate, you're a Buddhist. It's simple compassion. Can you show kindness to everything around you? To plants and animals and human beings and so on and so forth. So the question was, what is Hinduism? If Buddhism is compassion, what is Hinduism? Now, of course, I can also say, well, you know, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? But then if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, what about the Ashtavakra Gita? Now, most people have not even heard about the Ashtavakra Gita, but then, you know, you can go in. But if you think very hard, and this is something I truly learned from the Ramakrishna Mission, I really learned, and I'm always forever indebted to the Ramakrishna Mission for teaching me this. I believe it taught me that Buddhism is quite simple, and Hinduism is quite simply happiness. Because remember, the Hindus always say, Sat Chit Anandam. And that makes perfect sense. Think about it. Hinduism is telling you that you are really trapped in a set of what we would today call anxieties, right? It could be status anxieties, it could be for maybe many of you, how to pay your student debt anxiety, it could be your prom anxiety, it could be what job you will get anxiety, it could be your, you know, whatever. There could be a million other anxieties, right? And those anxieties keep building. Come, why don't you come here? Come right in front. Those anxieties keep building. When I was a student, I had a certain set of anxieties. Today, as a fellow in Columbia University, I have another set of anxieties, and they never leave us. I always thought when my first salary was 6,000 rupees, I thought, finally I have money, I'm making it, right? That's it, I have no more worries. Very soon I realized, of course, this was no money at all. And as I subsequently began to earn more and more, I realized it's never enough. It will never be enough. No matter how much I earn in my life, it will never ever be enough. So it's a set of anxieties, it's what you build around you. Hinduism is saying, if you discover yourself, you free yourself, you liberate yourself from these sets of anxieties. And of course, if you liberate yourself from anxieties, you'll realize what you have left. It is bliss. What is freedom from anxiety? It is bliss. It is Satchit Anandam. It is happiness. So it makes perfect sense that the Hindus who built their idea around the idea of breaking away from these multiple chains of anxieties would come to the conclusion that enlightenment is nothing but Satchit Anandam. It is bliss. It is the idea of eternal happiness. It is the idea of happiness to the extent that you're not even afraid of death. Because remember, finally, death is the biggest fear. And none of us, not one of us, thinks about it every morning. But I have been rudely awakened to the fact in the near past by a set of very unfortunate circumstances. If you begin to think that you're going to die, and it's not very far away if you really think about it. Most of you probably spent about 20 years of your life at least, right? Many of you at least. Maybe not one of you, one or two of you, but most of you have at least lived for about 20 years of your life, right? All of us will probably live, depending on how polluted the air is and what water we drink and how poisoned our food is and so on and so forth, between 60 to 80. As an average, I'm saying. We will live till that, right? So you've actually lived a large chunk of your life already. If you wake up every morning thinking that you will die, it changes your perspective entirely. It completely changes your perspective. And Hinduism says you can be free of the fear of death. It's that fundamental idea that you can be free of the fear of death. Now, all of this, what does all of this lead to the theme of the talk? Here's how it's all connected. If you look at all of these anxieties and you collapse them with all the technology that's coming, and many of you will know here that we are really at the moment only at machine learning at the moment. We haven't even gone properly to artificial intelligence. We properly don't even know what are the enormous possibilities that it can bring. We're getting a sense of some of these things. I told you about this research program that's happening about the idea of vision. What can be implanted in the eye so that the vision itself completely changes? The idea of vision changes. what can be implanted in the hand or the leg, whereas the idea of human mobility completely transforms. Right? There are many studies which say that the human body, as we have known for most of humanity, will not exist in this shape and form till 2050. Most human beings will have some implant or the other in their body by 2050, including the most recent in Switzerland, I think it was, where they found an implant where if you put it in your body, it constantly monitors how healthy you are, including checking whether you have cancer or not, or even have the, the slightest beginnings of any question of ever having cancer. So if our physical body is going to change completely, what is that? Let me put this to you. What is that one thing you're probably not going to have? You will have all of these things. You will have implants, you will have all this technology, you will enter a house and Alexa will crack jokes with you, and then whatever, the pod will say something to you and the car will start whenever you whisper to it, and so on and so forth. And the milk will come flowing into your fridge and you don't have to worry about it, blah blah. What will you not have? You will not have one thing. You will have all of these things, but you will not have one thing that has determined and determines even today the idea of being human. What will you not have? Any idea? Yes, gentlemen there.
Human interaction.
Human interaction. Anybody else? Any other answer? Yes.
Like the definition of like what you are, or who am I?
The definition of who am I? Yeah. A feeling of contentment. Anybody else? Happiness. Somebody else? Anybody else? Let me put it to you that the one thing that you already have, love, sure. Well, it's debatable whether we have that even today, but I mean, but love is an entirely different conversation. We'll keep that for another lecture. But let me put this to you. One of the things that you already don't have, and you already instinctively know this, it's just that you don't reiterate this often enough to yourself, is the idea of free will. Even today, your idea of free will doesn't even extend to Amazon.com. Because it's the algorithm that determines what you buy. Because it's the algorithm that's crunching up from all your past data of how you've purchased to push things towards you, which you buy. It's that magical idea, right? I keep seeing people discuss it. I just thought about this product. How did it appear as an ad in my Facebook? Actually, you didn't think about it. You mentioned it somewhere. That's how we know Cambridge Analytica is a reality thing, right? The data is going somewhere. It's going somewhere. And that's why what you even buy, your instincts of what we think of as free will, is highly, highly questionable. The great historian Yuva Harari, the Israeli historian, some of you may have heard about him, he wrote that wonderful book called Sapiens, and then wrote a book called Homo Deus. Wrote in the Financial Times last December that we are entering into a world called dataism. So if you look at the whole of human history, humans have always worshipped something that they don't understand. In the beginning there was fire and wind and water and so on and so forth. They didn't understand how did a storm come. So they worshipped whatever, storm gods. And they didn't understand how the waters sort of rose, and they worshipped the waters. And they didn't understand how the rains fell, so they worshipped and asked for rain, and so on and so forth, right? Then they moved up and then said, well, we can create this and we can create that image and so on and so forth. Today, what is the one thing we don't understand? Well, Cambridge Analytica has told us what we don't understand is data, right? Most people. So he said something very clever. He said, well, we're entering into an age where, what is religion? And he said this, which really appealed to me. He said religion is essentially, why do we seek God? We seek God for answers. Or many people seek God for answers. And we'll come and I'll connect this to a wonderful thing. How many of you say the Gayatri Mantra every morning? Or have heard the Gayatri Mantra every morning? Have heard the Gayatri Mantra being said? Everybody has heard it. Okay, we'll come to that in just a second. So we turn to God for answers, some sort of answers. Most of your students, maybe you pray to God whenever you want to get better grades, and basically it's a relationship of bribery, right? I mean, you say, God, well, I'm going to really do this, and could you please make that, I don't know what is the grading system here, but could you please make that, instead of H minus, can you make that H plus, or whatever, right? Or from A minus, or whatever, to B, from B to A minus, or A, or whatever it is, right? Today, what do we not understand? We don't understand data. And we're now turning for answers to this mythical thing, which we don't quite understand how it works, but we feel the answers are there. And I see that as a business journalist a lot of times around the world, companies who don't even understand very well how their basic security system works, but some companies come and put a security system in their office, they keep telling me that, oh, we have spent $10 million in a new data crunching system. But how will it help? But they believe it will. It won't. I mean, I have seen company after company go bust in spite of their great data crunching system because they don't know how to use it and they don't know how to manage it. They don't know what to do with the analysis that comes out, and they have no understanding of how to merge it with their product. But there is this data. Data will give us all the answers. So, you know, Mr. Narayan, this is early in my journalism career when Infosys was about, you know, a mid-run company. And in those days I was in CNBC, I'm talking about whatever, 10 years ago. And there was a lot of hype about Infosys. And Mr. Narayan used to say that in God we trust, everybody else brings data to the table. Right? So now, if you cannot find God, you believe data. But you see, this idea that data will give you the solutions is a mythical idea. It's an entirely mythical idea, quite like the idea that God will give you all the solutions. It is a mythical idea. It doesn't work. It only works, and here's where the connection with Hinduism is so strong. It only works, and Yuva Harari ended his article by saying this, is if you know yourself better. He said the final answer is know thyself. And of course, the moment I read know thyself, it transported me straight into the Vedanta, of course, into Aham Brahmasmi, into Tattvamasi. Where is the truth? The truth, you are the truth. Where is the truth? Where there is the truth, it is you. Right? So unless you know yourself better, none of this technology will help because it will only make you more powerless and not powerful. Like a bad, psychotic, dystopian nightmare from Black Mirror, you will be giving credit scores to each other from every interaction, but your social interactions will only get worse and worse. How many of you have seen that episode of Black Mirror where he has to, and so have you? So there's an episode in Black Mirror, the Netflix show, where human beings keep giving themselves scores on every interaction. So you say hello to your mother, and she says, oh, that hello was not good enough, 3. And then you say, my mother made a face, so 2. And suddenly as you are walking away, you suddenly see your credit scores drop. Your social credit scores. And you're constantly being evaluated on the social credit score with every interaction. Right? It's just really, I mean, you see that episode, it's very disturbing. Lo and behold, it's already happening. Guess where in the world it is happening? In China, of course. Of course it is. In China. It's already being applied in China. Right? Not to the extent that is shown in Black Mirror, but to a certain degree. And in all of this, the only thing that can help you is to know yourself. And Hinduism's beginning is know yourself, its middle is know yourself, its end is know yourself. There is no answer to be found anywhere but by knowing yourself. The other reason why knowing yourself is really important is because we are in a very unique point. How many of you feel that among all faiths, Hinduism is not very well understood by most people you meet? People don't get it. How many of you feel that because people don't get it, you find it hard to explain what Hinduism is all about? You find it hard to explain what are these rituals, what are these customs, why do we have so many gods, is there really a monkey god, do Hindus really worship cows? How many of you feel irritated and sometimes unnerved? Somebody shut the door so you can be honest. Sometimes unnerved, sometimes irritated, sometimes agitated, sometimes just befuddled with these questions, which sometimes maybe you even ask yourself. Why only blame somebody else? But maybe you ask yourself these questions. How many of you feel that? Considerable number. And I could see that first 1 or 2 hands went up in classic Hindu society style, then a couple of other hands went up. And then some people surveyed most of the room and said, well, I think about 60 people are saying, 60% are saying yes, so I can also raise my hand. This, by the way, sums up the experience of Hindu society over 5,000 years. This is how we have behaved for 5,000 years of Hindu civilization. I mean, I don't want to, we're in a college campus, I don't want to go into controversial topics, but this is our story in a nutshell. Slow raising of hand in a crowd. That is Hindu civilization. At least that is political Hindu civilization, if nothing else. We don't want religion here, but that is political Hindu civilization. But anyway, be that as it may. These questions are important. All of us have faced it, right? I begin the book with this wonderful experience which triggered my writing of the book. I went to a Protestant school, and it was a wonderful school. I mean, I am who I am today because of the wonderful schooling I received in Calcutta. I was very proud of it. They taught me many things. But one of the sum total, one of the key things of that schooling was a daily chapel service, which also I loved. The hymns were wonderful. You know, I enjoyed them very much. But there was always this sermon at the end of all the singing and so on and so forth, where the idea of sin was visited again and again. You know, that there is sin, right? Excellent. So now what happens? How do you become sinful? So we are often told that, oh well, you know, we were told in those days in Calcutta that idol worship is a terrible sin, and then, you know, you go and dip yourself into these dirty rivers, and that's another sin, and you will never get out of all this sin, and this sin will drown you, and so on and so forth. What did I know? You know, I was a boy, I didn't care, I mean, you know, I was having fun, whatever. But one day it amused me a great deal, and the book, and I'm very happy to tell you that the book begins with amusement, and ends with amusement also, but begins with amusement. Because there was this one particular lecture, sermon, where this pastor went on and on saying, oh, this is sin and idol worship. That day was particular about idol worship. It's a horrible thing and it's terrible, and you will definitely go to hell and so on and so forth. At the end of it, all pastors were given these little sheets of paper of announcements and what's going to happen from tomorrow onwards. So he lifted that paper and said, oh, and by the way, as you know, the good news is tomorrow onwards is Durga Puja holidays. And it occurred to me that we had just heard for 45 minutes this berating on the idea that the sin comes from idol worship, and merrily we will go into this gargantuan, massive idol worship, you know, jamboree for 10 days. What a strange, hilarious situation this is, right? But while as a boy I didn't understand it entirely or didn't process it entirely, I thought about it later, that in a sense what a wonderful thing that is, because only the multifariousness of Hindu society can accommodate with hilarity these dichotomous things which would in many societies cause extremely violent clashes. There was a hilarity to it. A lot of people thought of it as a joke, and they saw the joke of it, and I suspect many of the pastors who were all from Calcutta, they also saw the joke. I remember we had this Jesuit father, you know, down the road from another great Jesuit school. And, you know, whenever I see Father Brown on Netflix, it reminds me of these Jesuit fathers we used to know when we were in school. They were all enormously funny, very kind, they had a great sense of humor, and they always had great stories to tell us. So this Jesuit father once told us, this little boy, or whatever, one of us, that, do you know, Jesus actually looked more like you than he looked like me. He was an Irish father, you know, a tall, blonde man. And he said, well, you know, actually Christ, who came from the Middle East, looked more like you than like me. And there was a sense of humor to this whole experience. But my book began from there because I realized that there are so many of these concepts and topics that we don't understand. And let's now come to the Gayatri Mantra. So many of you have heard the Gayatri Mantra. Do you know why the Gayatri Mantra is special? It's a unique prayer. Among the history of prayers, it is a unique prayer. But why is it a unique prayer? Why is the Gayatri Mantra a unique prayer? It is a unique prayer because if you look at how prayers are structured, what does a prayer do? A prayer is usually a supplication. But the prayer says, well, you know, give me this, give me that, give me courage. Or at one point, even older, protection. When human beings were scared about what would happen to their lives. So they would say, oh God, protect me from this, you know, protect me from that. You know, the fire God would protect me from fire, the water God would protect me from water, and so on and so forth, right? The Gayatri Mantra neither asks for anything nor asks for protection. It doesn't say, give me wealth, make me successful, give me money, give me great health. It does not say, protect me from this, protect me from that. It doesn't ask for anything. Now you will ask, what does it ask for? What does the Gayatri Mantra ask for? The Gayatri Mantra asks for illumination. It asks for light. Now what is light? Light is the idea of seeing. If you read the Mahabharata, I feel that the Mahabharata is replete with this idea of seeing. Remember, this idea of seeing, and that's why I spoke about vision and technology inside it, is replete in Hindu tradition. Because when Hindus go to a temple, they don't go to worship, they go for darshan. It's a very unique concept. They go to be in the presence of the divine. The worship is part and parcel of activity there. But the main reason that Hindus go to a temple is because they want darshan. The idea that they will be in the presence, literally in the presence with darshan of the divine. The Gayatri Mantra asks for illumination. In the Mahabharata, as I was saying, even in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this moment when Arjun is telling Krishna, well, you're telling all these things to me, but I still can't do it because I don't get it, right? I cannot raise my bow and arrow and kill my family. Think about what you're asking me to do, and I'm of course putting it in very simple terms, in simple language, but that's the substance of it, right? And he says, I don't get it, I don't understand. And at that moment, Krishna says, you don't get it because you don't see. You don't see because you cannot see me with the eyes that you have. I have to give you vision so that you can truly see. And it's that wonderful moment when in the Bhagavad Gita, which says, Krishna gives Arjun the vision, and Arjun sees the universe within the body. And I get gooseflesh even as I say it in every lecture. Arjun sees the entire three universes in the physical self of Krishna. That's when he understands what is being asked of him. Because till that moment, he still thinks, well, it's a war, I've fought many wars, I have to fight another war, why can I kill these people, blah, blah. He does not understand the context of dharma that encapsulates this entire incident. He's still seeing it as an incident, a happening. When he's given vision, that's when he's able to see. It happens again in the Mahabharata. Remember that wonderful incident when Krishna goes to the court. This is the final negotiation. And he tells them, it's fine. You don't have to give them anything. Don't give your cousins anything. There's this beautiful poem by the great Hindi poet Dinkar called Rashmi Rathi. Some of you might want to read it in translated or in Hindi if you read it, if you read Hindi. And he says, you don't have to give anything. You give 5 villages for the 5 brothers. You give 5 villages, you take away Indraprastha, you take away all the wealth, you give 5 villages, we will be happy with 5 villages. Just give us that, Duryodhana. And of course he says no. He says, no, of course not. How dare you ask me that? Not only that, he says, I will, because you have dared to come to my court with this insubordination, so to speak, I will now throw you into prison. I will imprison you. In that moment, Krishna says, how dare you? How dare you say that? Because you don't even understand. And there's this wonderful scene where the entire court goes silent because everybody else realizes what Duryodhana is saying and to whom. And then the whole court sees once again in the body of Krishna the entire universe. Right? So the act of seeing is very powerful to us. It's a very powerful thing among the Hindus. I want to end there because I want to take questions and I want to keep some time for questions. I want to end with a popular culture connection, which many of you. How many of you read The Fountainhead? Ayn Rand's great The Fountainhead. Generations are really changing. There are only 3 or 4 people who have read The Fountainhead. But okay, fair enough. Well, The Fountainhead, for many of you, or at least the people who have read, is about this great architect called Howard Roark and his basically struggles against the world. So Ayn Rand, ran away from Russia, socialist Russia, and she hated that system, and she wrote these books about, modern libertarianism actually in a sense comes from Ayn Rand, because she's the one who taught us this idea that human beings are meant to be free, but they have a particular idea of freedom and so on and so on. But Ayn Rand is one of those wonderful books. Generations of students have loved Ayn Rand because all young men have read the first page of Ayn Rand and hated themselves. That's why they liked the book. All young women have read the first page of Ayn Rand and hated all the men around them. And that's why they liked the book. Why? Because Ayn Rand's Fountainhead begins with an epic description of this near-perfect Greek godlike man who's standing on a cliff on the edge of this huge waterfall, stark naked with perfect, bodily, whatever you want to call it, size, you want to call it structure, essentially like a Greek god, really, standing on that cliff. And what is he doing? People always, I remember having this conversation somewhere and somebody reminded me of Osho. Osho, the great Bhagwan Rajneesh, wrote this great book called From Sex to Superconsciousness, right? At the end of his words, somebody told Osho that, look at what has happened to your movement. All these people have done all sorts of things and so on and so forth. So Osho also had a sense of humor. So Osho supposedly said, and this could be an apocryphal story, but I think it's a wonderful story and connects to the story I'm telling. He said, well, I told my followers from sex to superconsciousness. But most of them never went to superconsciousness. They just remained at the first level. I told them the entire path, they just remained at the first level. So Ayn Rand is really important and beautiful because Howard Roark is that wonderful idea of perfection. So what is Howard Roark doing at that moment? It's not the fact that he's not wearing clothes that's important. What is most important in the first few lines is that he's laughing at nature. For people who have read Ayn Rand, they know that the lines begin, the Fountainhead begins with the line, Howard Roark stood on the cliff and laughed. Here is a man in supreme, it's that idea of man's ultimate control on nature. Here is this perfect man in defiance of nature standing there and laughing at it because he knows he's going to control it. I was fascinated and mesmerized the first time I read it. As I grew older, especially when I began to write this book, it occurred to me what is the flaw in that argument. And that is perhaps the flaw in much of modern libertarianism. The flaw is that, again, the idea is that man is separate from nature. That man is going to conquer that nature. That man laughs and defies to that nature because he or she, as the case may be, is separate from it. The Hindu worldview imagines this as a continuum. That's why we say as you go higher up the stages of consciousness, you realize that you and any other living being are essentially the same. It's the idea of, that's why in the Ramakrishna mission they say that Ramakrishna Paramahansa was able to take the cancer from somebody else into his own body, take the illness into his own body and save somebody else. Now, people never know whether that literally is meant literally or not. But the point is this idea that you subsume and are able to understand consciousness at a level that all human consciousness and you are one singularity. And that's why that image of Ayn Rand is flawed, because it's a competitive, aggressive image. The Hindu imagination does not imagine this eternal competition. It imagines a sublime, supple whole. We imagine the unity as it always had to be imagined, as a unity. And that idea, I want to tell you, the idea for that imagination is upon us. No matter where you go in the world, it's an idea that people are seeking out. It's an idea that people want to know about. It's an idea whose time has come. And this is our moment. This is our time. The idea, the Hindu imagination and its idea has come, because in the great idea, in the great imagination of the Sanatana Dharma, we do not think anybody is away from it. It subsumes everything we know. Anyway, as you know, when they wrote the Upanishads and the Vedas, very simply, there was nothing else. That's why they called it Sanatana Dharma. They didn't say, well, we are this tribe and you are that tribe. They said, well, this is the law of the universe. That's why we don't have divisions. We don't want divisions. And our time has come. I truly believe our time has come. I want to go back and end with one of the things one monk told me of the Ramakrishna mission when I began to give this lecture. I have now given this lecture across America and India maybe at 100 places, well, not exactly this lecture, but some form of from the book, that I asked him, what should I say to all these people who come to listen to me? Who should I quote? Should I quote the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads? Should I quote Vivekananda? Should I quote Ramana Maharishi? Should I quote Adi Shankaracharya? Should I begin by, as the Shankara said, Chidananda Rupam Shivoham Shivoham, everything is Shiva, right? And he said, no, actually quote Barack Obama. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean quote Barack Obama? Like, you're kidding me. He said, no, it's perfect. I said, no, what, like, this is really strange. He said, no, think about it. One of the great problems that we have is we are always waiting for somebody else to come and solve our problem. Always. Somebody will come. And that's why we have Avatar also, we believe, Avatar will come and save us. He said, but Barack Obama was right. Barack Obama told his audience, we are the ones we've been waiting for. That's why they felt empowered. That we are the ones we've been waiting for. There is nobody else, there is only us. So I want to leave you with that thought, that we are truly the ones we've been waiting for. It is our generation that is going to change all of this that you have felt or think and so on and so forth. It is our generation which will give the idea of modern Hinduism a new avatar, so to speak. But that avatar is nowhere else to be found. It is to be found in each of you. You are the ones you've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you very much for listening to me.
We'll take question and questions from the audience now. So, does anybody have any questions?
Stupefying audience.
No,
but please go ahead. I mean, I'm happy to discuss. It doesn't even have to have a question. I mean, I'm happy to discuss anything.
Yeah.
Something I said, something I didn't say, something you have always thought, which is unrelated to what I said. Anything. Nothing. Yes, gentlemen. Yeah. Somebody needs to start.
Yeah, I'm wondering how do you propose that this process should really occur or inaugurate in young Indians?
I truly believe the process.
I think, I'm probably not directly representative, but I think I do represent. I'm representative to a certain aspect where I myself was largely ignorant of.
Yes. All of us.
Typical of the Indian youth in that sense.
Sure.
We are much less aware of even the basic tenets in terms of the philosophical tenets.
Of course.
Not the religious ones.
I understand.
And maybe we stumble across them at a time where either it's too late, we are either indifferent to them, or we have passed a certain threshold.
Sure.
Where it's not going to be useful anymore.
Sure.
So where do you think is the right time these things should come, and what should be the procedure? Because the way I was raised, I didn't find any avenue by which it was delivered to me.
Yes.
So.
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. Thank you very much. What is your name?
Soumitra.
Soumitra. Okay. Then Soumitra, there is no such thing as perfect time. That you came here today is a great time. That you picked up and read something is a great time. There has to be a beginning. And anyway, as you know, in our imagination of time also, there is only the present, right? We are only concerned in our, the construction of time as we imagine it, there is only the present. The East has always only considered the present, right? There's only one moment, the moment is here, the moment is now. That's why they say, are you living in the now, right? Are you living in the moment? So if today the fact that you've even asked this question means you've already begun the journey. And I truly began this journey has already begun. Think about it. I'm writing all these books. I'm just talking about the younger people, right? My friend Amish Tripathi, he's writing a whole other series of books which is looking at, great stories, mythologies and so on and so forth. My other great friend Sanjeev Sanyal is writing beautifully about geography and the geography of the Indian subcontinent, its meaning, its resonances and so on and so forth. There are various people. My other friend Kavita Kane is writing about Indian mythology and history from the feminist perspective, looking at all the great women in the Indic imagination and so on and so forth. So there are all these people who are already doing it, and I want to put to you, this has actually always happened to us. Think about it. Somebody like you could have asked the same question to Swami Vivekananda in 1893. Right? Same question. When he came to Boston in 1893, After one of his lectures, somebody came up to him and said, you should be very grateful you're here this year and not 40 years ago, because 40 years ago, if you said these kind of things, we would have hung you from the nearest tree. This is there in his letters. You know, if you just read the 9 volumes that he left behind. I wrote a book on Vivekananda also, and I was very grateful today because of, Aftanji here. I was able to go to the street where, they have this, placard from Vivekananda. But somebody could have asked him that question, right? Somebody could have asked the same question to Prabhupada when he brought ISKCON around, or took ISKCON around the world, right? So at every age, to anybody who was spreading the word, somebody could have asked that question too. I'm only saying, don't worry about when to start. Just feel that you have already started. That you have come, that you have asked this question, that you have even read one book, means your journey to explore has begun. Now it's up to you till what extent you will take this journey, right? Because you're saying, okay, when I was brought up, I didn't have these avenues. But remember, Soumitra, there are many people who were brought up in great traditional ways, but they completely deviate from that path. Right? It's not necessarily true that just because somebody was brought in this great tradition, they will follow it. In fact, I would argue that because you were not brought up in that tradition, maybe you will have intellectual freedom. Sometimes when you're very brought up in a structured way, you can't think beyond that, right? Maybe you will have intellectual freedom, right? I would consider it a strength. So your journey has already begun. Now the point is, till what extent will you take your journey? That's up to you. Right? So I wouldn't worry so much about that.
So do you actually say that there should be no institutional effort directed, or
I'm only saying there should be. Well, look, I mean, I didn't. So I read about institutional effort. I did not wait for an institution to come and tell me to write a book. Right? I had no idea. In fact, Avtanji will tell you, there was no Indic Academy when I wrote this book. It didn't exist. It happened later. Right? So I'm saying institutions assume that something will come. If it doesn't come, you will still do your work. Are you saying unless there is institutional support, you cannot read the books? Forget about everything else. You focus on yourself. Are you saying without an institution, you cannot read the books you want to read? No, right? You can still read what you want to read. You can still talk to the people you want to talk to. Why do you assume that you have to now change hundreds of people? Even you yourself have a certain amount of learning. That itself is a great boon. Because the moment you think about, oh well, now institution will come, and then there is no beginning, right? We have to make a beginning. If you forget you even talking to 5 other people, I'm saying even if you read 10 other books and understand 10 more things, that itself is enough. Think about it from an individual perspective. So yeah, that would be my answer. Anybody else? Yes. See, now more people want to ask. Excellent. Go ahead, sir. No, both of you can ask. It's fine. There's no bar.
Yeah, let's do sort of a conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. So actually, I want to
tag on to the question that he asked.
Question.
Yes.
A step further.
Yes.
So basically, it's a great idea, and I understand what you said. At an individual level, if we start the journey and we try to go as far as possible, that is itself a boon.
Yes.
However, we are social beings and we are national beings, and we look around what is happening.
Sure.
Right? So, your talk is like being Hindu in the age of artificial intelligence. I would go a little laterally, and I would base my question on something I call being a Hindu in the age of mainstream media. So my question is, and I think I care a lot about it.
No, sure.
Right? Because as a Hindu,
whenever somebody says mainstream media to me, I start to get worried.
Yeah, because you also come from an insider.
I do come from an insider. Yes, it's true.
As a Hindu family, we have been very traditional, and we have followed a principle which Vivekananda gave, Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitaya.
Sure.
Right? We have, as a Hindu, I think I respect my religion, I understand, I am also able to respect all other religions.
Sure.
If somebody worships Jesus, I am the one who can go to church and feel the same which I feel in the temple.
And not just you, know that Ramakrishna Mission itself celebrates Christmas, you know that, right?
Yeah. So, coming from that liberal environment, when I see the word Hindu is associated with primarily the negative things in the media and in the source of dissemination of knowledge. And I see among young Hindu Indians or like young Hindu people around the world, there is an anxiety to use the word Hindu to describe themselves.
But does it still exist?
Yes.
Let me give you an example. I know you feel it, and I'm not denying what you feel. I'm only trying to tell you that.
And what is the way to counter it?
So I'm saying that.
So beautiful.
Right. So I'm only saying that has already been countered and is changing quite dramatically. I'll give you one example. Yesterday, I don't know how many of you follow me on Twitter, but some of you I know do. Yesterday, we had this large sort of argument and protest really, because somebody in America said that according to their translation of the Valmiki Ramayana, supposedly in the Valmiki Ramayana, Sita is telling Ram that you're a misogynist pig. Okay? This was their translation. And this is an academic who's an academic of religion or who's an academic of South Asian religion.
We can write it.
No, I'm just trying to be, polite these days. But anyway, it's all on my timeline, so there's nothing to hide. So anyway, all of us protested. Do you know, between me and Amish and Kavita and a whole bunch of others, do you know how many people retweeted and commented? More than 5,000 people. Do you know in how many hours? Barely about 12 hours. 5,000 people, and it's still going on, by the way. The whole day it went on, half a day, well, it began half a day. It went on, and the whole day this has gone on. So I would say at this point, maybe 10,000, 15,000 people have commented on this. Including recently I saw some professor from, NYU in the Abu Dhabi campus, someone else from somewhere else. Including, and to your point, do you know, one of the most interesting comments is this wonderful young Muslim man who has come on to, called Kashif, who came onto my timeline and connected to this professor and said, I am not even Hindu and I am deeply offended that you said something like this. It is so reprehensible and so terrible and I don't believe something like this was said, and if it is, people have been asking you for so long, which I was also asking, why did you show the exact translation? So imagine even a young Muslim man who has no bones with anybody just saw it and was really appalled. He was horrified that something like this was being done and he protested. Right? I found that so wonderful. Including there's another professor, Omar Ali, who's been saying, and we're having a conversation, that, why is this generated towards Hindus? I mean, what's going on? Right? And we're talking about, the past and, historiography and colonial rule and all sorts of things, right? But the point is, all of these conversations are very much alive. And here's my point. If 5 years ago or 10 years ago, this conversation was 1%, today I would say it's at the level of 20%. I know being away here in America, in this campus, you may be feeling it's at 5%, but actually even that 5% is much larger than the 1% where we used to be 10-15 years ago. But actually, if you went a little closer, it's actually at 20%. Now you could still say, well, it's still 20%, it's not even like 50%. But remember, we are coming from, you have to always see, this is basic economics, right? You have to measure always from the base. What was our base? Our growth can always be, or has to be correlated to our base. Our base was less than 0, right? You'd be surprised how many people told me that I shouldn't write this book. When I told them I want to write this book, you would be surprised how many people who told me. And if I one day sat down and told you who are these people, you will be astonished and appalled.
And I'm sure people would have told you to change the title.
Of course. Of course.
And that's my draw point.
But I'm saying,
it's beautiful.
Right, I agree. But I'm saying I still wrote it, right?
I know. Yeah.
And it was still published in India. And it became a bestseller. And it was published in America. And it won an award in America. I'm saying, we still have to do what we have to do. And I'm telling you that more than ever before, whether it's because of the people going into meditation, whether it's because of yoga, because of a whole bunch of things, the interest levels around the world are unprecedented. That's why I say this is our moment, this is our time. We have a wonderful philosophy to share. We don't want anything in return. It's not like we want people to give us money or anything like that. We have a philosophy which we believe is ready for the 21st century. Because it's a philosophy which is open. I often say that Hinduism is an open source software in the world of religions. Right? The reason it is so supple and can accommodate so many things is because it's an open source software. But remember, open source software doesn't mean we don't have a core. People often make a mistake saying open source means you have no core at all. That's not true. We are open source because we are fundamentally liberal. That's a very different thing, because we have the breadth of intellectual ability to accommodate every new successive advance in philosophizing. Right? It's not because we don't have a core. It's because as philosophy grows, so does our mental capabilities to analyze and philosophize along with it. That's why we are able to accommodate. Right? So don't make that, that's why I don't agree when people say it's a way of life. I mean, what is a way of life? I mean, I wear black sweater, that's also a way of life. Right? It's not a way of life, it's a philosophy, it's a religion, it's a theology. But it is unlike any other because it is open source, because we have constantly worked to expand the breadth of our imagination. We have not constrained our imagination. We have opened the breadth of our imagination. That's why it's open source. And it is incumbent, and that doesn't mean there are people saying all sorts of random things also about Hinduism. I mean, recently I heard somebody said, supposedly there was the internet in the Mahabharata. I mean, I was like, actually I get very bad internet sometimes, at my flat in Colombia. Maybe I could put, like the Mahabharata on top of my laptop and I don't know. Right? I mean, so that there are a lot of people, and this is not to blame, but people say that, human beings are random, come on. People say random things. So that doesn't mean you accept anything that people are saying. And there are a lot of, let's be quite clear, there are a lot of, there are people who say really vulgar things also in the name of Hinduism. They might be saying some violent things. I am not saying at all we should accept any of this. I am saying in every path there will be some bad people. We cannot determine the path because of those bad people. Right? We do not say there are fundamentalists in every religion. But we do not say the religion is fundamentalist because of those bad people. Right? There are some bad people in Hinduism also. But the path itself has a real virtue. And it's up to us to really change that and tell people about it.
One direct question.
Sure.
Because you come from mainstream media.
By
individualistic, I understand. So the people who understand the philosophy.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, the people who understand the philosophy, I agree that they are very open. But I sometimes have a feeling that there is an institutional effort. As Amit mentioned, institutions, and I believe institutions are very important.
They are,
right?
It's needed.
There is an institutional effort to link every negative thing in the world to the word name.
Well, look, here's my real honest answer to you. Thank you so much. Here's my honest answer to you. Generations before ours, people have been brought up in certain milieus. They've been taught that this is superstition, this is progressiveness, right? Now, all of these things, when you're taught from the childhood, it doesn't go in a hurry. These things become institutionalized, if you know what I mean. Because the same people are growing up and they are the ones who are running the institutions and whatever, right? It will take time to change. It's a question of time. The good things are the Hindus are patient. We've always been patient, right? We are a patient civilization. So, I don't think we should be in a rush. And as far as future institutions are concerned, I just said this to my friends. I come from what would be in the world of academia we call social sciences. We have no money. You guys are the ones who are going to make more money. You guys are the ones who are going to build all these tech companies and get your first million and billion. You guys will have to fund these institutions. So I am pitching early to all of you that please keep a certain amount and ensure that you fund the institutions. Because we are from the social sciences, we have no money. We depend on you. Alright? So, but yeah, I mean, to answer your earlier question, yeah, it's just a matter of time. Anybody else?
So, this is not related to the current discussion which is going on. So, in the initial part of your talk, you mentioned about what is the purpose of life?
Yeah.
Why should you not kill yourself
Yes.
in the next 5 minutes?
True.
And then later you went on explaining that it is basically to achieve moksha, kind of eternal happiness.
I would say understand yourself, which will bring you that happiness.
So is that only the purpose of life?
To me, in
So
my
understanding yourself.
my understanding yourself, my understanding of the meaning of life is that the purpose of life is to understand in its most sublime sense who you really are. Because if you understand who you really are at its very fundamental spiritual core, you will realize a truth about existence itself, which will free you from a lot of things that have been, some people have called Maya, some people have called anxiety, some people call something else, but fundamentally things that are hurdles to your path of understanding. So I would argue again and again that the fundamental point of Hinduism is this idea that the reason that you live is to understand more deeply who you really are. The day you understand that, all else falls into place. It is because you don't know at your most deepest self who you really are. Once you get to that, you will realize, let me give you one small example for you to understand this better. In our philosophy, as you go higher and higher up the consciousness, and as I was mentioning, you start to, what is affinity, right? What is kindness? Kindness is affinity. I feel a particular affinity towards you, so if you're in pain, I want to reach out and help you. Affinity happens very deeply between mother and child because it's all part of the same body at one point, right? But as your consciousness grows, you start to feel this affinity because then you're not seeing the external body of the person. You are feeling a certain affinity of consciousness with that person. That's why monks are so kind often, right? Because they have gone up to a higher point of consciousness, so they feel a particular affinity. They don't have to be family or best friends to feel that affinity. You see what I mean? They're able to feel an affinity just because you're a living human being. And not just a living human being, they're able to feel that kindness towards everything, towards plants, towards animals, right? That's why the ascetic life is so kind often, right? Because it gives kindness without demanding. Because most of our interactions of kindness also are interactions of transaction, right? I'm going to be kind to you and helpful to you, knowing that you will do something for me too. But the monk doesn't give like that. The monk just gives, right? These are higher states of consciousness. At the highest state, you realize that the universe is, as Adi Shankaracharya, as I was saying, realize, Chidananda Rupam Shivoham Shivoham. Everything is Shiva, right? Everything is God, right? Once you realize that, then you realize that what am I fighting? What am I quarreling? What do I even want? What is there left to want? All of these things get sorted out. So therefore, I would argue very strongly that if there is one purpose to life, the purpose is understand yourself. Yes?
Yeah, but why do we want to know the truth, and how do we know that the truth is existing? And without knowing that, how can we invest our entire life to just knowing the truth?
Why do you, just before you answer this is going to be the last question. We can continue. You can still ask him questions informally. Right after this answer, you can purchase the book here and you can sign up for Hindu Yuva and Vedanta Study Circle. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody that we're about to conclude. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So how do we even know there is a truth? Right? Okay. Let's begin with that. Well, we know there is a truth because clearly the life that we lead today is not entirely happy. Are you happy all the time? Well, then you're truly a blessed human being. I mean, you're truly evolved. That's wonderful. But most people are not happy all the time. And it's because most people are not.
I didn't know anything. But
you didn't know anything where?
Enough to be happy.
But that's great. You're happy like a child. That's why children are happy. They are unaffected by the world. They don't know any of the dangers of the world. They don't know all the conflict. And that's wonderful. If you genuinely feel that way, truly you're blessed. And I don't mean it as a joke at all. Then you're truly, you should be very happy about yourself. But most human beings are constantly fraught with anxiety. It's about something. First, the anxiety is that what will I do with my board exams? Then what job will I get? What college will I go into? Then who will I marry? How much money will I have? What house will I buy? What car will I have? It's an endless process. And it's because human beings are constantly fraught with anxiety about something or the other that they see greater meaning somewhere. Then they're like, oh well, but I bought this BMW also, now I'm still unhappy. Now what do I do? Okay, but then I married the person of my dreams, but I'm bored and unhappy. Now what do I do? Now I say, okay, I have children, but now my children are there, but again, now I'm worrying about their school fees, and so I'm again unhappy. It's a constant cycle. Do you see what I mean? And it is in order to find that peace that people then ask the question, what does it all mean? I'm doing all these things, I'm going through all these things, but what is the meaning of all of this? And the moment they ask that question, their spiritual journey begins. Because the answer to that question only lies in the end of the spiritual journey. What is the meaning of this? Because what is the meaning of this will always take you into who am I. But here we are. I'm truly delighted to have met you. Truly, this is the first time in all these lectures somebody has told me that they are always happy.
Knowing that I'm happy, I'm not certain anything.
which is amazing. But some people are genuinely like that. I had an uncle like that who really, and it's not like bad things didn't happen to him. There were things happened and whatever, but he genuinely had a temperament which was untouched by many of these things. And some people are like that. Like I said, you remind me of what my uncle used to say. Yeah, things would go wrong and whatever, some things would go wrong. But he would be like, okay, tomorrow's another day and we'll figure it out. Which is amazing. If you have that temperament, that's amazing. But most people don't. Excellent. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I have to